Morning. Appreciate everybody being here. Before we kind of get into football, I know it's football season, but, we're in a baseball town, fortunately. So, best of luck to the Astros. They get started here this afternoon. I'm sure everybody will be tuning in television. But, just credit to ownership, Mr. Crane, Dusty, what he's done. Obviously, Dusty and Lovey have a relationship that goes back. James Click, their consistency year to year, is second to none. Quite frankly, it probably reminds me of an organization I used to be with. But anyways, it speaks to what they've done to win however many games, 100 games a year for however many years. Excited for the city. I think everybody's excited to watch baseball, even though it's football season. So a credit to them, and certainly wish them luck, and tip of the cap to what they've done. This week, lighter week for us as a team. Players are in today. Have, a couple days of work. They'll be off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then kind of get ready to go here for the next, I'd say, phase of the season. Really, when we come back, once we play Vegas, you're talking about 3 games, 11 days. So getting prepared physically, emotionally, mentally for the tax that they're going to go through here. I think it's important for the players to understand what's in front of them. And then in the interim, I think we talked about this last week. I know Lovey talked about this last week, just the recognition of Founders Day. So we kind of have an event to kind of commemorate that. It's always a philanthropic effort that the team, the organization does. So we have Family Houston here today, focused on mental health and with youth. So players and staff will be involved in that. But it's a great way for the organization to give back, just to commemorate, what Mr. McNair did and the importance of when the organization was founded. So players will be involved in that here today. Try to get some football work in here over the next few days like we talked about, then kind of get ready to go for the next phase. Reality is, get what you earn in this league, and we've earned 1-3-1, so it's not good enough. Got a lot of work in front of us. I think everybody's accountable to that. In the end, all of us have to be better. We need to be better. The only way to do that is to come in each day with the right attitude, with the right mindset, and put in the work and go out there and try to execute on a consistent basis. I think one of the things that stands out, not only this week, but if you go back to last week, or it might have been a week before, I want to say 75% of the games have been one-score games. So what does that mean? It means that every play is critical, and we've talked about this here as a group, and I've mentioned this. I mean, it's a handful of plays in each game are going to be the difference between winning and losing. And I think we've seen that in some of our games. I think if you watch a Vegas game, which is relevant because it's our next opponent, a handful of games, that was the difference last night, right? So 20-7 at halftime, or 20-7 at the end of the half, kick off with 10 seconds left, have a completion, have a penalty, kick a field goal, 60-yard field goal, longest in Arrowhead Stadium, or whatever it's called now. I think it's got some different name. But anyways, 20-10, so one possession game. So they get the ball, it starts the second half. So Kansas City has really the 2-for-1 there, right? Score at the end of the half, score in the first possession, 20-17. Kind of goes back and forth there in the fourth quarter. Get the penalty on a field goal attempt by Kansas City, miss a field goal, get the pull and shoot call, they score. Vegas goes down, scores a touchdown, miss a 2-point conversion, and, in the end, it's a 1-point game, and it comes down to 4th and 1 at the end of the game. So that's the NFL. I mean, that's the reality of what we face. We see it in our game. We've seen it in our games. In the end, we haven't executed well enough, and we've earned 1-3-1. So, we have some opportunity in front of us to get better. There's certainly some things that we can improve and fix, and that's what got to be our commitment to each other and to the team. And this league's about, identifying problems and finding solutions. So the quicker we can do that, the better off we'll be, and that will translate hopefully into, more wins and losses, more wins and less losses. So that's where we're at. So, take a question here. Go ahead, John. Start with John, and then go to Brooks.
Thank you. Up to this point, could you evaluate your rookie class and not just look at just guys like Heinrich and everything, but playing a lot?
Yeah, I think they've come in, they've had the right attitude, they've worked hard, and they have varying levels of production. I think the rookie class, kind of starts with, really tip of the cap to, I would say, Lip, Zeke, John Richter, Bailey, Brad, Najee, George Panos. That group, they're intimately involved in that process in terms of identifying those players. But I think they've come in with the right attitude. And really, we're only 5 games in, John, so I don't think we can get too excited about where we are. I think you just got to be realistic. It's really about repetitive behavior over the course of time. Anybody can go out there and do it in a short period of time. Can you sustain that performance week after week, month after month, season after season? And ultimately, your longevity is going to be based on that. So we've gotten decent production out of that group, but I think the attitude, the mindset probably stands out more than anything. I just use Pearson as an example. So Monday's the off day for the players yesterday. He's in here squatting, 425. So, and then people wonder why. Well, why is he successful on the field? Well, he's successful because he works hard. He's got the right attitude. He's a good teammate. He trusts the people around him. He gives credit to his teammates, to the offensive line, to the tight ends. He doesn't make it about himself. So I think more players with that attitude, more players with that mindset collectively in this building and in this program, ultimately that's what it takes. It's not about one player. It's never going to be about one player or one person or one draft class or anything like that. It's going to be a collective effort over the course of time. And those guys, when they've had opportunities, have certainly done some good things. There's plenty of room for improvement from those players. And now I'd say the other thing that's taken place is now we have 5 games and everybody's kind of seen our team and our players. So it's a personnel-driven league. It's about strengths and weaknesses, being able to identify strengths and weaknesses in the opponent, who you're playing against. And whatever you do well, you want to try to accentuate that and maintain that. Whatever you're not doing well, teams are going to find it. So you have to figure out a way to fix a perceived weakness so that it doesn't become a bigger problem as a team. But overall, they had a good attitude. They've worked hard, including the guys that weren't drafted, including the guys on the practice squad. So, we'll see if we can kind of continue that, I would say, mindset moving forward.
Nick, how tight would you describe your cap situation right now? How do you describe the challenges immediately adding players to the roster, trades, anything that you might try?
Yeah, really not a challenge at all. I mean, it's not that tight. I mean, we're not that much different. There's some teams that have a little bit more, some teams that have a little bit less. So it's just about managing the year. I would say during the season, quite frankly, there's really not that much movement. You're managing week to week. You're managing the practice squad. Players are going to come on and off the roster. Financially, you have to look at salary. If you're doing a trade, I mean, obviously a player's salary for the duration of the year. So whatever the paragraph 5 salary is at the beginning of the season, okay, it's 12 weeks. So you prorate that. So does it make sense? What's the cost of doing that? So, I mean, we don't feel constrained by anything. If there's an opportunity to add a player that makes sense, we'll look at it. If there's not, we won't. So it's very simple. So I would say really it's not that much different than where we were last year. So we'll manage the season. We'll manage the team. Guys are going to be going on and off the roster. Guys will be going off the practice squad. Guys will be going off injured reserve. So it's the cost of doing business. Every team's got to deal with it. We're no different. And then once the season's over, then we'll recalibrate and look at 2023 in terms of where we stand. Yeah, I think overall as a team, we just need to be more consistent with our performance. So there's been some good things. There's been some things that, we can certainly do better. So to certainly put Davis in that category. So I think it's more emblematic of, the team more than anything else. So making it about one player. So had some moments as a team. I have more better moments. And, if we do that, then hopefully that will lead to more, wins and losses or more wins.
You have your scouts working year round and you're 5 games into the season now. At what point do you start evaluating the needs of this team?
Yeah, we're a long way from that. So I think the focus is on week to week. So really let's focus on the Texans this week, the bye week. It's really our week to focus on the Texans. And then next week we'll kind of transition to the Raiders. And then once we get through the Raiders, get to Tennessee and then to Philadelphia. So that's where the focus is week to week. So kind of have separate buckets. So kind of have the week to week team and the opponent. And then our scouts, the group that kind of mentioned there a little bit earlier, they're going through their process as well. So it's basically since August and up until this point have been at practices, have seen live games. It's not like we're going to certain games to see certain players. We're going to see as many players as possible. That information is going to come into our system. I get every Monday an update from a group, the players that they've seen that week, kind of, all right, here's this player, here's his strengths, here's his weaknesses, here's what we think this player is going to be. I process that information, kind of put it into master documents. So kind of that's one separate bucket, kind of focus on our team and opponent, and that's another bucket. Once we get through the season, then we'll kind of evaluate where the needs are or whatever we think we need to improve the team. So everybody has a responsibility in the organization. The best thing that they can do is do their job to the best of their ability and focus on the things that they can control. And I'd say, we're pretty fortunate with that group, that kind of lip overseas. I mean, they do a great job. I mean, it's a great group of guys. They're very team-oriented. They work their ass off. They care about the team. They understand some of the things that we're looking for. Part of my responsibility is to articulate, okay, here's some of the things that we're doing. Here's some of the things that we're doing with this player. Here's some of the things that are important, so they can kind of incorporate maybe into evaluation that they're doing on a particular player and then say this player potentially could fill this role and here's why, and being able to create a clear vision for that player. So I'd say that information is pretty fluid. That'll really go all the way up until kind of end of November, beginning of December when the games end. So then we'll kind of put that to bed, and then in the middle of December we'll get together and kind of have an initial run through of, all right, here's a group, all right, and then December to, let's call it end of January, underclassmen to all-star game evaluation, and then get through that, and then a combine. So and we have a wide, array of information, and a vast amount of information is going to come through before we kind of get to needs and draft and those types of things.
Nick, Lovey's brought the rookies along in various different ways. Derek and Jalen seemingly played 100% of the snaps since day one. Kenyon was moved along. When you look at the rookies and how they've played so far this season, have you and Lovey always been aligned in their usage?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the players, since we drafted them through training camp to this point. So in the end, we're going to do what we feel is best for the team, and Lovey's going to make the decisions that he feels are best for the team relative to, who's on the field. If we have to make an adjustment, understanding that young players are young players, and there's things that they haven't done, there's things that they haven't seen. They're going to have to go through and understand the why behind it. Here's why this particular play happened, or here's what happened on this play. Try to make the correction, and that's where coaching comes into play. So their individual position coaches, I would say specific to those two players, Dino and Joe Dana and, and Ben. I mean, and Alir, to a certain extent, Alir works kind of with, Des King and the Nichols, but that's part of the weekly. Each week is going to be different. Each player is going to be different. Each receiver is going to be different. Each offensive scheme is going to be different. How we need to play is going to be different. So understanding, here's what we need to do. Here are some of the things that we can do better. You can do better both individually and collectively. So all those discussions, I'd say, are very, fluid, very organic, and very consistent. And I think everybody's embraced having young players in the building. There's no timetable on anything. If that's the best thing for the team, then they'll be on the field and they'll play. If it's not, then it'll be somebody else. So that'll be the same between now and end of the season. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot that changes between now and week 18, whenever that is, for a myriad of reasons.
Nick, how much do you rely on Lippert, and what do you like about the style he brings behind the scenes as a coach?
Yeah. Yeah, no, James is a smart guy. I mean, we hired him as a scouting assistant in New England, basically fresh out of playing linebacker Georgia Tech. He'll probably tell you he knew he wasn't going to play in the NFL because he wasn't good enough linebacker. But, he was a smart kid, and he kind of worked his way through the system. I think how we evaluate players, some of the things that are important, he understands that, and he's able to manage the group of scouts and communicate with them on a regular basis. And I think part of my responsibility is to give people in positions an opportunity to do their job and that you trust them. So James and I have a background, goes back a number of years. Now we've kind of transitioned, I would say, systematically some of the things that we're doing offensively and defensively and relative to maybe our experience in previous systems and previous organization. But part of that is learning and growing and being able to be receptive to new ideas and new thoughts, and trust the people that you have in the position to do their job. So a lot of respect for Lip and how he does his job, how he handles himself, both personally and professionally. And the group, I would say, is really a reflection of him and all of them individually in terms of their makeup. Like I said, we got a lot of great people. I mean, those guys, I have a lot of respect for them, have a lot of trust and faith in what they're doing. And my responsibility is to try to teach and educate as best I can and make sure that there's constant communication to understand why we're doing things, understand in every decision that we make. They may not understand why, but try to give them some background so they have an understanding. And if there's an application that they can use to help their growth, part of my job is to kind of help them grow in their job. So if we can help their growth, then we can overall grow as an organization. So a lot of steps are involved. A long-winded answer to saying I have a lot of respect and appreciation for the work that James does.
What do you envision for Jordan Akins? I know he's against that maximum 3 times he can be elevated. Well, within your assessment, what do you envision?
Yeah, I mean, the rules are the rules, so we'll have to work within the confines of the rules. So, we'll have to maybe make a decision at some point. I wouldn't say there's anything definitive, but Jordan's returned, had a good attitude. When a player comes back, he leaves and comes back. You're not really sure how that's going to go. But Jordan's done a good job. He's had a good attitude. He's taken advantage of his opportunities when he's played. Bird's done a good job with him. So it's been good to have Ake back in the building. So kind of recalibrate this week. Understand we don't have a game to play. Probably have some things to get that position. I think Brevin's going to be back here at some point. TQ could potentially be back here at some point as well. Jordan's done a good job with his opportunities. OJ's done a good job with his opportunities. Mason's, gone in there and helped us here a little bit. So, we'll look at that and we'll just try to make the right decision, the best decision, relative to what we think helps us in the game.
What did you think was Damian Pierce's tackle breaking run, the 20-yarder, and just that kind of exemplify what you guys hoped for in that end?
Yeah, I mean, it was a good play, I'd say, just within the context of the drive. We were able to get the ball in the red area, get the ball in the goal line, get the ball in a scoring situation. So, I think it was collectively as an offense. I mean, the play was, we had an opportunity to get the play started, and then once you kind of get into the second level, just being able to make tackles miss. I mean, he's got good lower body strength. He's got good toughness. He's got good playing strength, and I think you saw some of those things on that particular play. There's a certain level of want to finish plays. We talk about this. Coach Warhop talks about this, just straining on the offensive line, straining to finish. I'd say it's a good example of, DP straining to finish and really doing everything in his power just to try to keep the ball moving forward. I'd say the best thing about that play, I mean, the next play wasn't as good, but the best part about that play is probably the ball security with all the traffic, with, breaking tackles, being able to secure the ball. The next play down there by the goal line, we were fortunate, his ass was on the ground by about, that much, before the ball came out. So nothing's more important than ball security, especially down there at the goal line. You want to make sure you take care of the football because taking care of football hopefully leads to points. But, it was a great effort on his behalf, and, hopefully we can, do that as, we'll take more of that as a team. Go ahead.
You just finished talking about Jordan Akins, but what has been your overall assessment about your practice squad in general? Because in addition to Akins, you also had some production from Jeff Driscoll and Graylin Arnold as well.
Yeah, we talked about this kind of at the beginning of the year, and Lovey articulated this in different points. So we've kind of looked at it beyond sort of the 53 players that are on the roster, understanding that you have more players eligible on a week-to-week basis. So what we try to do is look at what are our needs, what do we think our needs are for the game, how are we positioned, how many players at each position do we want to take to the game, and then what are our options. So say whether it's a role offensively, whether it's a role defensively, the kicking game is a big part of that as well. So, the rules are the rules, so you have 3 opportunities with one particular player to elevate them, and then once you use the 3 elevations, kind of to this question there, all right, at some point you're going to have to make a decision. So we've been very purposeful about the players that are on the practice squad. We've tried to kind of solidify our depth off the roster. So you have depth on the roster and you have depth off the roster and how you utilize your depth. Every team goes through that. I mean, when you go through the elevations, look what different teams are doing. We're probably one of the few teams that's had probably 2 every week. Other teams, it's kind of 1. Most teams have at least 1. And you're just trying to figure out what are your options. Maybe if it's health related. So, okay, here's this guy's not ready to play. The good thing about your practice squad, which is why you want to resort to that group, because they're in the building all week. So a lot of these guys, in our particular situation, have been here since the beginning of the year. Now we brought in some players externally from other places. They have familiarity with our system, with our coaches, what the assignments are, what the job description is. Graylin's another example. Graylin's been here since last year, goes through training camp, close to making the team, not a practice squad. And then we bring him back to the roster, and he's been able to help us a little bit in the kicking game. So I would say that situation is always going to be pretty fluid. There's probably other players that we're not even talking about right now that maybe at some point are going to be in the same position that Ake has been in, that Graylin has been in, and that Mason has been in. So it's week to week, and we'll kind of look at where we are as a team, what do we need for that week, and just try to make the right decision for us. Go ahead, Brooks.
You were talking about Ledford earlier. Whenever you were constructing how you wanted that whole department to look as a GM, what did you want out of that? Were there things that you wanted to change? You mentioned some of the the schematic changes, I guess, or some sort of shift. But like even his position, how would you describe it? What do you want him doing? What was kind of your vision for that department?
Yeah, anybody within an organization is just kind of understanding what your role is, understanding what your job is, and then you provide value to the organization and then to serve the people in the organization and just do your job to the best of your ability. So James has good experience, in terms of seeing players. He's seen a lot of players, probably has a little bit better understanding, on the college side, but kind of try to broaden that out here a little bit. And just understanding, I would say, our team, our league. And then one of the things we try to do is when the rookies transition from being drafted into other teams in the league, try to evaluate their progress and then go back and say, all right, well, here's a player we graded at a certain level. Okay, here's how he's played. Here's what happened. All right, where we were on evaluation. All right, we were close, and kind of use that information and say, all right, let's go back and kind of, we'll watch groups of players first year, second year, here's where we were, here's what we were thinking, and just be able to kind of have a big picture understanding of, I would say, player evaluation and player analysis is constantly changing, constantly evolving. You kind of have your root system in place. I think one of the things I alluded to schematically, just relative to our background, was 3-4 roots and kind of variable system. Now we kind of transition here a little bit to more 4-man fronts and some of those different things. So it's really more about, I would say, how we're playing, more than anything else. So being able to kind of rearrange the grading scale of player profiles and, okay, certain positions, maybe we have less of this position, more of this position. Okay, these players kind of fit into this profile. So being able to kind of, I think, adapt and adjust, I'd say it's a big part of it. And I think, one of James' strengths is his ability to adjust and adapt and to bring creative ideas to the equation.
One of the recurring words that Coach Smith was using before last game was finishing. He wanted the team to finish it. It seems like you always get right there in the fourth quarter. So when you evaluate and you go back and you look at the games, how close do you feel like you all are to turning that corner and finishing some of these games that you alluded to earlier?
Yeah, nobody can question the effort of our players. I mean, the effort has been there since day one. I mean, they play their ass off. I mean, we play with our hair on fire. So the effort is there. Really, it's about the execution. So just executing the critical plays in critical situations, which that equates to finishing games. And we were able to do it here in the Denver game, in the Jacksonville game. Other games, we weren't able to do that. So really, it comes down to, at play execution and going back to these handful of plays. And I think the reality is none of us know when those plays are going to take place. So you don't know if this play is actually going to be the play that makes a difference in the game. So just understanding each play, doing the job, running the play the right way, executing the assignment the proper way. If you're supposed to be in this gap, be in this gap. All right. If you're supposed to have this assignment, then execute that assignment. When you don't do those things, then it compromises the rest of the play and the rest of the defense, and it puts other players in a bad spot, which then correspondingly leads to, I would say, inability to execute the play and inability to finish the way we had all hoped. So each week is going to be its own entity. We kind of hopefully learn from what happened in those previous opportunities. What can we do to change it? What can we do to get it fixed? All right, if that situation comes up again, all right, here's how we handled it last time. Let's see if we can handle it a little bit differently. So it's really, the game is going to evolve and unfold as we go. And really, the game usually declares by the end of the first quarter and the second quarter, like what they're doing offensively, which I'd say Jacksonville, going back to how they played. I mean, the game declared pretty early, whether it was formationally, whether it's some of the things that they were doing schematically. So your overall awareness as a team, understanding what's going on during the course of the game is important, because what shows up in the second quarter, inevitably it's going to show up in the fourth quarter. All right, so let's see if we can just make sure we don't make the same mistake. And I'd say, Stingley's play is a good example of, there's a play that, has hurt us here, I would say, over the last 2 to 3 weeks. So made a little bit of an adjustment, played a little bit better, and had a better result. Now, I'd say Stingley, and he knows this, made a poor decision leaving the end zone, because the smart play is to stay in the end zone so that we gain 20 yards field position, not start on the -2 yard line. Now, I'd say, fortunately for us, we were able to take the ball from the -2, get it to midfield, punt, flip the field a little bit. So in the end, it didn't end up hurting us. So I'd say, in the end, all these factors, we have to just do a better job as a team understanding why those things are important. And the players care. They play hard. Effort's never going to be a question, and the players understand that. We just have to kind of see it all the way through and then be able to execute it completely in the end.
Lovely and Pepe both said you're a run-first offense. Bears touch the ball 29 times. Do you need somebody to take a few carries from you? Are you happy with your current setup of 2 backs?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're comfortable with the players that are on the team. We really have 5 backs called in the building, 2 on the practice squad. I mean, Royce has played. He's played for us. He's played in the NFL. I mean, Dare's had opportunities, in Jacksonville when he's had to carry the ball. So, Pierce has gotten the bulk of the carries. Rex has a good role, but not afraid to use Dare, not afraid to go and kind of to, earlier question, Royce on a practice squad, but at some point if, Royce might become an option. So we're going to probably need everybody, John, here from now until the end of the season. So just making sure that we got the right people that we feel comfortable with. I mean, I think that there's a reason the players that are in the building are here, because we're comfortable with them and because we have confidence that if we have to put them in the game and play, they'll be able to give us some level of production.
When Pat Hamilton, whenever y'all promoted him to office gray or talked about it, was this the vision y'all had for the quarterback position? Was it because of Davis to construct it this way, and how do you value that position? Would that change?
Yeah, really, offensive football is whatever you got to do to win, move the ball and score points. So, like, it's not, I don't want to, oversimplify it, Brooks, but in the end, that's what it comes down to. So whatever you have to do to get to that point. So I'd say there's some things that we've done. We'll go back, we're looking at it here this week. Say there's some things where, we've been better than others. And if there's ways that we can improve maybe in some of those areas where we're not as good, then it'll help, the overall ability to continue to move the ball and score points. So third down can certainly be better. Third down is related to first down, so early down production equates to third down. So it's all tied together. So in the end, offensive football is about moving the ball and scoring points. How do you do that? Every team has a different philosophy. Every team has a different approach. Quarterback position, I don't care who the quarterback is, what team you're talking about. You got to make the right decision. You got to take care of the football. You got to throw the ball accurately, and then be able to execute in critical situations. So, pick a winner. If that's what your quarterback has to be able to do. Tell me the scheme. Doesn't matter the offense. Doesn't matter what you're running. Those are things that are important. And then offensively, move the ball, score points, and then get the ball in the end zone. Because in the end, it's about points. That's what matters.
How much progress have you seen this team take with Lovie Smith and Pep Hamilton when kind of looking at it where this franchise were this time last year?
Yeah, I don't really look at it that way. Last year's last year, so it really has no bearing on what goes on this year. So we kind of look at our team. We know kind of where we are as a team. We know who the players are on the team. There's an opportunity for us to improve the team. We'll look at that. If not, we know what we have. We know what we have to do each week. Each opponent presents a different, I would say, challenge. So the challenges that Jacksonville presented to us are going to be different than the challenges that Vegas presents. A totally different way of playing defense, totally different players. So just understanding what are they doing on the other side of the ball, who we're playing, and then what do we need to do as a team. So it's really about week to week. What can we do that week to prepare ourselves as much as possible, get ready for that opportunity? And I know it's kind of a cliche, but you're really trying to go 1-0 that week. You're not really worried about what happened the previous week. You're not really worried about what happened the previous year. Got to focus on this week. What do we need to do to win? What are our challenges? What are the obstacles in front of us? What do the Raiders do? Not in a week or so ahead here, but what do the Raiders do that we need to prepare for and need to be able to handle? Which I would put Crosby at the top of the list. All right, so you start with Crosby on defense. All right, so if we don't take care of Crosby, we're not going to move the ball and do anything. All right, and then offensively, I'd say they're a varied scheme offensively. Use a bunch of freaking 21 personnel last night with the freaking jumbo tight end because Waller got hurt, and Jacobs runs for 150 yards. Okay, is that going to be the same game plan that they bring in here against us? I don't know. They got 3 good receivers, they got a good quarterback, they got 2 good tight ends, and they got, one of the best offensive play callers in the NFL. So, his thing is let's figure out what we need to do in order to win that week. So we just have to prepare for whatever those challenges the other team presents to us, and that's how we have to approach it. Yeah, they've played a lot of football, prior to arriving here in Houston. I know it's college. I know it was at Baylor. Sorry, John. But, they play a lot of football. I think they're learning a lot. I think there's certainly things that they can do better. They'll admit that. And I think one of the things Joe's talked to, Jalen about, Jalen's a good football player, but, he's missed a lot of tackles. So tackling is something that you can certainly improve. We've talked to Jalen about that. He's actually, I would say, over the last couple of weeks, has certainly gotten better. But finding areas that you can improve as a football player, it's not just about all the splash and all. It's about being consistent and improving areas that, maybe you're not performing as well. But he's got the right attitude. I'd say he's got probably as good of a routine as any young player from time he walks in the building on, in the morning. Before practice, he's in the weight room, he's stretching, he's going through his preparation. So being a good player is about having a routine, it's about having preparation, being committed to that week after week, day after day. That's what's going to make you a good player. And then having the requisite physical skill behind it. So all those factors go into it, and I would say those 2 players in particular, which I would say is emblematic of most of the rookies, have that mindset and approach.
I'm just curious, what went into we didn't have a chance to speak to you after this happened, but when you all had Graylin Arnold, he had a couple more opportunities to be elevated, and then you all signed him. I understand he's played well. What went into the decision to sign him?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of that, some of this is just really roster management, what you think makes the most sense, and all right, does it make more sense keep that player in a practice squad, or if you have a roster spot? I think at the time we might have had a roster spot or something that was going on that we knew right, this is a player that we feel good about, has a good role. Okay, like this makes sense to put him on a roster. So each situation, each case is probably going to be a little bit different. But I would say, Grayland, in his particular case, I would say he earned the opportunity. It's not like we just handed a bunch of cookies and said, here you go. He earned the opportunity. It was performance. He was close to making a roster, didn't make the initial roster, but stayed prepared, stayed ready, had the right attitude, and had an opportunity when we elevated him to the roster. So I would say the roster situation is always very fluid, with players like that, but it's credit to the way he handled himself and his approach and his work ethic and his attitude.